Hello everyone, my name is Haley Elizabeth, and if you don't know who I am, I post videos pertaining to kind of whatever I want. Conspiracy theories, controversial people, true crime, vlogs, and all things spooky, scary skeletons. So if you're into any of that, you can subscribe, and if not, no hard feelings. Like, let's chill, hang out, talk some true crime, grab your snacks, grab your water. And I know everyone's gonna be like, Haley, take down your Christmas tree. It's after New Year's. First of all, mind your business. Take it down when I have the time, okay? And when I find the box, I lost the box to it, so yeah. What a predicament I'm in. Hop right into it. So today we are going to be talking about the case of the Zodiac killer. Back in October of 2021, they actually uncovered who the Zodiac killer was after 51 years of not knowing who it was. It was a complete unsolved mystery. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. Usually at this part in the video when we're talking about certain killers, I'll include a backstory, but in this case, there really is no backstory because, as I said, this case was unsolved for 51 years. So we're just gonna skip the biography portion and go straight to the very first killing that was confirmed to be done by the Zodiac killer. On December 28th of 1968, 17-year-old David Faraday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen in California on this road called Lover's Lane. Lover's Lane is basically like an empty parking lot slash park that people usually go to, you know, it's Lover's Lane, so you connect the dots. And these two teenagers were just sitting in this parking lot when all of a sudden a man comes up to the front window. The man actually shot David in the car. This freaked out Betty, so she got out of the car and started running. And that is when the shooter shot Betty 5 times in the back. Afterwards, the police did not know who this crime was done by. They had very little information. They had like a few boot tracks. They had some tire tracks, but that was really it. It was very hard to find a suspect, and also this was during the 1960s where DNA and fingerprinting was not as advanced as it is now. Now fast forward to July 4th, the 4th of July, 1969. Just a few minutes away from the incident that occurred on December 28th, a very, very similar killing had happened. 22-year-old Darlene Farron and 19-year-old Michael McGew. They were a couple just, you know, hanging out in their car when all of a sudden a man walks up to the car and tells them to get out. When they refused to get out, he shot the both of them. Ended up shooting Darlene 5 times and Michael 4 times. Now, when the police actually got there to investigate the crime scene, Michael had fortunately survived this incident, so when he was brought back to the hospital, he was able to describe to the police exactly what the man looked like. He described him to be 26 to 30 years old, a white male, very stocky, over 200 pounds, and 5'8" with dirty blonde curls with glasses. So with this, they decided to bring up a sketch of the man, and this is the sketch that they went along with for as long as the Zodiac murders went on for. Less than an hour later, the police station actually received a call from a payphone. On the phone was this man who basically confessed to the murders of the 2 teenagers on December 28th and the murders that happened less than an hour ago. At this time, like during the 60s, it was not easy for you to just like look up crime scene photos. The only crime scene photos that you saw were those of the newspaper. So when they were on the phone with this guy, he basically confessed to the murders, and the police were like, well, how do we know that you actually committed the murders? And that is when the man on the other side of the phone started to get very specific details as to what happened in the 2 murders, such as locations of the body on the crime scene, the exact gun that was used for both of the crimes, the time of death for both of the crimes, other various very specific details that you could not know unless you were either on on the police force or the murderer himself. The following month, on August of 1969, 3 different newspapers received very odd letters. All 3 of the letters started with, "Hello, this is the Zodiac speaking," and this was the very first time that the killer of these crimes have formally introduced himself. But what was really odd about these letters is that these letters spoke in specific code, ciphers, and cryptograms. Now, if you don't know what ciphers and cryptograms are, basically I'll throw like some examples up on the screen. They're mostly used by like government officials. Within this letter, there were some like parts of the letter that were written in the English language, some that they could understand, but then other parts of the letter were really hard to decode. All 3 of them individually had hired someone to come in and try to break the code or crack the code, but it was just so perplexed and intricate that not even the best of the best code crackers that these newspapers could find could actually crack this code. And all 3 of the newspaper letters said towards the end that this letter must be released to the press immediately. All 3 of the newspapers had released this letter, and that is when 2 students from the University of California saw all 3 of these letters being publicized in these 3 different newspapers, and that's when they figured out this letter was not supposed to be a single letter on its own. This letter was actually a piece of a puzzle, and these 3 newspapers releasing their piece of the puzzle, all 3 of them combined, is the full letter in itself and what you need to actually crack the code in full. The Zodiac killer, at this time, this is like the very first time that you start to see him kind of wanting more fame, more credibility. The only way to get his fame is to get publicized, and the only way to crack this code is to get publicized. This also included subletters as well, so sometimes subletters meaning one letter will also equal another letter, but it can get very, very tricky when that one letter could be meaning to 4 other letters. It's such a confusing mind game, and that's why these things are very, very hard to crack. He was just so intelligent to the point where like it kind of racked people's brains how he was able to come up with something this intelligent, but it also scared the police as well because, you know, he was very, very smart at what he did, clearly. I'm so goofy, and I literally forgot to say that the university students I was talking about earlier from University of California, the one that found out like, oh my god, this isn't just supposed to be one letter, it's 3 separate letters combined to make one big letter, and that's the only way to crack the code. The 2 university students that found that out actually ended up cracking the code, figuring out what it actually says, translating it to actual letters, and this is what the letter read. I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all to kill. Something gives me the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. That is the only portion of the like actual letter that's available to the public. This was the Zodiac speaking, and then he goes into how he loves to hunt people as a sport. Also in this letter, he tends to go on like a few rants saying that all the people that he kills on Earth in the afterlife, those people will then become his slaves when he reaches paradise. This also indicates to the police that whoever is writing this probably suffers a mental illness. They're kind of disconnected with reality. On September 22nd of 1969, 22-year-old Cecilia Shepard and 20-year-old Brian were at Lake Baronessa, which is basically like a nice little beach area. Usually a lot of families go camping here or just go to the beach, have picnics, and that's basically what Cecilia and Brian were doing. They were having a picnic on the beach when all of the sudden, in the middle of their picnic, they see a man approaching them, and this man is walking towards them with an executioner's hood on, glasses over the executioner's hood, a gun in his hand, and a bib with a circle and a cross on it. Now, this circle and cross is very familiar because on the 3 letters that the newspapers had received, at the very bottom of all 3 of the letters had had this circle with a cross symbol in it. That is again kind of showing that this is the Zodiac killer that is approaching them right now. When the man approaches the couple, he basically tells the couple this crazy story about how he's a fugitive and he's on the run right now. Like, very odd for the Zodiac killer to do something like this, because as I said, it just kind of shows that he wants attention, basically. Like, he wants to prove himself to be very high and mighty, and in this situation, that's kind of what he was doing. By the end of his story, he pulls out pre-cut rope and hands it to Brian and tells Brian to tie up Cecilia. Now, he has a gun to Brian, so obviously Brian does as he says. Once Cecilia is tied up, the Zodiac killer then ties up Brian, and once the couple are both tied up, that is when he pulls out a knife and begins to stab the couple. He stabs Brian 6 times and Cecilia 10 times, and then leaves them there, walks over to his car, and in black paint, he writes the words Vallejo, which is the area that Lake Berryessa is in, 12/20/68, December 20th, 1968, where the very first murder I talked about, that couple in the car, 7/4/1969, the 4th of July couple that I also talked about earlier, September 27th, 1969, that day's date, 6:30 by knife, along with his Zodiac symbol, basically inferring that this was in fact a crime done by the Zodiac killer. Shortly after the crime took place, like even before the police were even aware that the crime had taken place, they receive a call from a payphone right around the corner of the police station from a man basically saying that there is a double homicide at Lake Berryessa and he is the killer of them too, confesses to the murder, hangs up, and then walks away. Once the police found out which payphone this was coming from, they immediately went to the payphone, but when they went there, it was a little too late because he had already either drove away or walked away, but they were able to get some fingerprints off of the actual payphone. As I was talking about earlier, a lot of like the technology back then was just not advanced as it is now. So back then, they were able to get fingerprints from certain things, but they weren't able to do global searches as they are now. The only way for them to match a fingerprint to someone is if they had the suspect there with them. So they have the fingerprint, and then if the suspect were to come in and put their fingerprint down and the fingerprints matched, then they did the crime. They weren't able to like put the fingerprint into a computer and then that computer would search. Like, they just didn't know how to do that yet. So they had fingerprints, they just didn't know who it belonged to. When they actually got to the crime scene itself, unfortunately, Cecilia had passed away, but as for Brian, Brian had actually survived and was able to tell his story to the police and explain exactly what happened. Of course, since the man had a hood on, he couldn't really give a like description of the man, just basically what he was wearing. On October 11th of 1969, a cab driver by the name of Paul Stein was just doing his normal route until he sees a man hauling a cab. So typically when you're a cab driver and someone's hauling you, you pull over. He pulls over for this man, and when this man gets in the car, the man immediately shoots Paul Stein in the back of the neck. The area that this cab was hauled in was kind of in like a suburban neighborhood where there were houses all around, so there were some people who were looking out their windows during this time that actually saw the man and was able to give a description of the man running out of the car. Paul Stein, he had passed away, so he wasn't able to give his story. People in the surrounding area called the police. The police got there and they were able to get a description of this man. When the people were giving a description of this man, they gave the same exact description as the first guy, 26 to 30-year-old white male, stocky, over 200 pounds, with glasses. This is so insane to me. Police show up to the crime scene. They're like, okay, homicide. They talk to the witnesses who actually saw the crime and was like, this is what the guy looks like. 30-year-old white male with glasses, about 5'8". With this description, he's writing it down. He's like, okay, yeah, 30-year-old white male. He goes over to his other like police officers that are, you know, also investigating the crime scene, and he tells them, don't know why. He looks at his notes, he's like, wait, white male? Not on my watch. Policeman, it says in my notes here that he was actually a 30-year-old African-American male. He tells the other police officers that the witnesses said that they saw an African-American male when so clearly they told him that it was a white male, and he wrote down that it was a white male. So when the police went out to search the area to try to see if they could find the shooter walking around, couldn't find the guy because they were looking for an African-American male. Why the police officer did this, I have no clue. I really don't. Like, what is the point? If you're trying to catch a murderer, catch the murderer. Like, I was baffled. I couldn't believe that actually happened. But yeah, so the police were walking around for a couple of hours looking and interviewing a bunch of African-American males who obviously were saying that they didn't do it because they didn't do it. When this mistake was brought to light, one of the police officers actually said that he saw a man of that description on the street over of the crime scene, but he didn't stop the man because he wasn't what they were looking for. They were looking for an African-American male, not a white male, when in reality, they actually were supposed to be looking for a white male. And that man actually turned out to be the real Zodiac killer, because in a future letter that you'll see later on, the Zodiac killer actually refers to having a brush with the police. The police officer didn't even pay him any mind, didn't even notice him, didn't even realize that he had committed the crime that they were like just investigating. This obviously fueled his ego even more because he just felt like he was so above the police that he could easily walk past the police officer that's investigating his crime and not get any penalty. 3 days later, the San Francisco Chronicle receives a letter from the Zodiac killer basically talking specifically with Melvin Belli. Melvin Belli at the time was a very famous like attorney in Los Angeles. Wrote a letter to Melvin Belli saying that he needs to go on the Jim Dunbar show. Go on the show, and if he does, he will call in and reveal himself. And I totally forgot to mention this, but if you paused and read the letter that I threw up on screen earlier, they connected the Zodiac killer with the Paul Stein case, the cab driver, because within the letter when they opened it, there was actually a piece of Paul Stein's bloody shirt. And he also goes into a hypothetical scenario where he would like to shoot up a school bus one morning and basically just shoot all of the kids as they're running out. I didn't really like talk too much about that. I basically just put the letter on screen, but I just wanted to say that out loud just in case you didn't actually read the letter, because it is important for what I'm about to say. He also goes into detail about how he is like in the process of making bombs and teaching himself how to make bombs. Spoiler, he never follows through with that school bus scenario, thank God. He was trying to make himself feel a lot bigger than he actually was. He mentions his brush in with the police officer and he got no penalty for it. This just made it even worse. Also, in this letter, it included a map for a bomb, but this map was written in the ciphers and cryptographs. A lot of people were trying to really crack this code. Melvin Belli thought that if he went on the Jim Dunbar show, then he would like receive a call from the Zodiac killer helping them out with the bomb puzzle and hopefully finding out where these bombs are located. Later on in life, it was turned out this was actually not a map of where these bombs were located. It was just a bunch of gibberish so that like it would keep them occupied for the time being. Melvin Belli obviously complies with his demands and goes on the Jim Dunbar show.
What's going on inside you right now, Sam? Please.
I have headache.
Right. How long have you had those headaches, Sam? In a long time?
Since I killed a kid.
Well, was it before December that you had the headaches?
Yes.
Were you in service that you might have had an injury in service? Did you ever fall out of a tree or downstairs? Were you ever unconscious?
I don't know.
You don't remember. Does aspirin do you any good?
No.
Doesn't do any good.
On the show, they received a number of 54 calls that they assumed to be the Zodiac killer. In this portion of the show, you could really see that he possibly could have a lot of mental issues. He starts saying things like, I need help, I'm sick, I don't want to go in the gas chambers. He then asks Melvin Belly to meet him in Dallas City. Now, when Melvin Belly does go to Dallas City, he is not there and he never shows up. That following day, the San Francisco Chronicle gets another cipher and cryptograph letter, but this one is so complicated that they couldn't even crack it until last year, 2020. They had code breakers from all over the world come in and try to figure out what this said, but not even the smartest of code crackers could crack this puzzle. And when he says that he was above the police or smarter than the police, sometimes when killers say that, they just say that to fuel ego. But in this situation, the police really did feel like this Zodiac killer really was smarter than the police. Before getting into the rest of today's video, I do want to give a big thank you to BLUELAND for sponsoring today's video. One of my resolutions for 2022 was to be more environmentally cautious and use more sustainable items, not just sustainable clothes, but also sustainable everything, but I just didn't know where to start, but thanks to BLUELAND, I was able to start that journey. BLUELAND is a convenient, affordable, and sourced from clean ingredients cleaning product brand that ensures that you are getting the most out of your cleaning products. Unlike your typical cleaning products that are used in those single-use plastics, BLUELAND gives you no single-use plastic in any components like the packaging, the bottles. It's also vegan and cruelty-free, which cruelty-free is like something that really means a lot to me, and also made without all of those harsh chemicals that you usually see in cleaning products like bleach, ammonia, VOC, and all you really need for this cleaning product to work is a nickel-sized tablet. It's super easy to use. All you do is fill the bottle up to the line with warm or hot water, drop in the tablet, and wait for it to dissolve. Once it's all dissolved, put the nozzle on and start cleaning. Usually I would pay around $4 to $6 per bottle of cleaning product and then just throw the bottle afterwards, which is so wasteful. But thanks to BLUELAND, it only costs $2 a tablet. That is equivalent to a small Dunkin' iced coffee. On BLUELAND's site, they actually have a cleaning kit, which instead of, buying all of the individual products, if you get the kit, you're already saving 20%. Thanks to BLUELAND, they're actually giving every single one of you guys a 20% discount for everyone who uses my link down below. So not only will you get 20% off just by buying the whole kit, you're gonna get an extra 20% off by clicking the link down below to purchase it. Again, thank you so much to BLUELAND for sponsoring today's video. In my personal experience, I've been using BLUELAND for a couple days now. Personally, I really do see a big difference in using BLUELAND versus other cleaning products. I feel like with usual cleaning products, when you're done, you're always left with that weird chemically smell. You know what I'm talking about. Like, it smells like cleaning products, but with BLUELAND, you don't get that at all. It smells very fresh, very clean, and it genuinely does leave all of my surfaces looking very clean and soft. Thank you to BLUELAND for sponsoring today's video, and if you want your own BLUELAND kit, make sure to go and buy it by using the link down below for 20% off. With that being said, now back to your video. By the way that all of the codes were set up, you could tell that this was not gibberish. It was actually a message of some kind. They just couldn't figure out what the message was. On October 30th of 1969, Sherry Josephine Bates leaves a message for her father on the refrigerator door, basically saying that she was off to the library but she'd be home later. Now, the following morning, the father wakes up and he realizes that Sherry is not in her bed and has never came home that night. He calls the police investigate the area, and they end up finding Sherry's body in a nearby alleyway. She had stab wounds all over her body and her throat was slashed, but after an autopsy, they saw that there was no sign of sexual assault and there was nothing stolen on her as well. So whoever did this basically did it out of pure pleasure for wanting to kill. There was no sexual intention and there was no financial motive. At the scene, they also found prints of military boots as well as a Timex watch. Hey doll, me again. Don't you just love when I forget to say things? It's literally one of my best talents. Basically, before the letter that I'm about to read you right now, when you go back to previous Haley, the Zodiac Killer had actually sent another letter the day after the Sherry Jo Bates murder that read this. This is the Zodiac speaking. Up until the end of October, I have killed 7 people. I have grown rather angry with the police for their telling lies about me, so I shall change the way I'm collecting the slaves. I shall no longer announce to anyone when I commit my murders. They shall look like routine robberies, killings of anger, and a few fake accidents, etc. The police shall never catch me because I have been too clever for them. I look like the description passed out only when I do my thing. The rest of the time, I look completely different. I shall not tell you what my disguise consists of when I kill. As of yet, I have left no fingerprints behind, contrary to what the police say. This is the Zodiac speaking. I thought you would need a good laugh before you hear the bad news. You won't get the bad news for a while yet. P.S. Could you print this new cipher in your front page? I get aimfully lonely when I am ignored, so lonely I could do my thing, and I can't do a thing with me. December, July, August, September, October equals 7. 7 victims. That letter was sent to the San Francisco Chronicle the day after Sherry Jo Bates, because in the beginning he says, as of the end of October, I have 7 victims. I just needed to say that because that's part of the story and I forgot to mention it. So there you go. On November 8th of 1969, they receive another letter from the Zodiac Killer, basically again gloating about himself. This one was a little bit different than the other ones because in this case it was not his handwriting but instead a typed letter. It's titled The Confession by blank. She was young and beautiful, but now she is battered and dead. She is not the first and she will not be the last. I lay awake nights thinking about my next victim. Maybe she will be that beautiful blonde that babysits near the little store that walks down the dark alley each evening around 7. Or maybe she will be that shapely blue-eyed brunette that said no when I asked her for a date in high school. But maybe it will not be either. But I shall cut off her female parts and deposit them for the whole city to see. So don't make it too easy for me. Keep your sisters, daughters, and wives off of the streets and alleys. Miss Bates was stupid. She went to the slaughter like a lamb. She did not put up a struggle, but I did. It was a ball. I first pulled the middle wire from the distributor, then I waited for her in the library and followed her out after about 2 minutes. The battery must have been about dead by then, and I offered to help. She was then very willing to talk to me. I told her that my car was down the street and that I could give her a lift home. When we were away from the library walking, I said it was about time. She asked me about time for what. I said it was about time for her to die. I grabbed her around the neck and my hand over her mouth and my other hand with a small knife to her throat. I am not sick. I am insane. But that will not stop the game. This letter will be published for all of you to read it. It just might save the girl in the alley. But that's all up to you. It will be on your conscience, not mine. Yes, I did make that call also. It was a warning. Beware. I am stalking your girls now. That was the letter, and I did not read a few of the parts because they're a little bit too much for me to say out loud. So this was a little bit odd to police. They were really wondering if this was the work of a Zodiac killer or just a random copycat killer. Also in this letter that's not public, he also makes comments about how he's impressed by the police, saying that he's surprised that they found his Riverside activity. On December 9th of 1969, Melvin Belly, the attorney from earlier, had received another letter from the Zodiac killer, and this was definitely the most vulnerable of letters that the Zodiac killer has ever sent out. It was basically a letter asking Melvin for help. As I said earlier, you could definitely tell from the Zodiac killer's previous letters that he did have a lot of mental issues. Dear Melvin, this is the Zodiac speaking. I wish you a happy Christmas. The one thing I ask of you is this. Please help me. I cannot reach out for help because of this thing in me won't let me. I am finding it extremely difficult to hold it in check. I am afraid that I will lose control again and take my 9th and possibly 10th victim. Please help me. I am drowning. At the moment, the children are safe from the bomb because it is so massive to dig in, and the trigger must require much work to get it adjusted just right. But if I hold back too long from no mine, I will lose all control of myself and set the bomb up. Please help me. I cannot remain in control for much longer. So along with this letter, he also includes diagrams of bombs and different types of bombs that he plans on making, basically proving to the police that he is not stupid and he clearly knows how to make bombs. Why he has such a fascination with Melvin specifically, I'm not really sure. And this is the very first look and insight that we get of the Zodiac killer's mind state. Before, we were just kind of speculating that he had some mental issues with the way that he would go on to rant. In situations like these, you do have to be careful because you start to gain sympathy for the killer and start thinking, oh, well, you know, it's not the killer's fault. He's just a prisoner of his own mind. You also have to think about it as like, okay, does he actually want to stop killing people, or is he just trying to gain sympathy, therefore gaining trust from the police force so that they kind of lay off of him a little bit? There are no return addresses, so even if Melvin wanted to help, he physically could not help him. On April 20th of 1970, they actually receive another letter from the Zodiac, basically with the first line being, "My name is blank." Through a lot of like online sources, there is a dash at this point. They soon realized that the cryptograph after the "my name is" was just gibberish. Again, he was just trying to throw off the police, be like, it has my name. So obviously if it has my name, they're going to spend a lot of time trying to solve it. Little do they know it's just gibberish, so they're never going to solve it. It'll just gain me more time. January 29th of 1974, 4 years after his last letter, he makes his final letter to the police saying this: "I saw plus think The Exorcist was the best satirical comedy I have ever seen. Signed, yours truly." He plunged himself into the billowy wave and the echo arose from the suicide's grove. Tilt, willow, tilt, willow, tilt, willow. P.S. If you do not see this note in your paper, I will do something nasty, which you know I am capable of doing. Me, 37, San Francisco Police Department, 0. And that was the very last letter that was ever sent by the Zodiac killer in 1974. Now, a lot of people don't actually know what happened to the Zodiac killer after 1974. You know, like usually in a murderer's mind, if they're getting away with all of these crimes so easily, it would give them more motivation to continue. But a lot of people don't know why he stopped. Maybe he died, got arrested, maybe he actually ended up getting the help he needed. A lot of people again suspected that this was his last letter because at the end it says me 37, inferring that he has had 37 victims, but the police have only connected 5 of those victims to the Zodiac killer, and the San Francisco Police Department 0, meaning that he has been arrested 0 times for his crimes. Since this was the Zodiac's killer, since this was the Zodiac killer's last letter, a lot of people over the years have tried to figure out what it means. 37 refers to him having 37 victims, but there have been a lot of conspiracy theories against that, and mine included. I personally don't believe that he has had 37 victims, and I know like that could be kind of shocking, but to me, and like when I was reading a bunch of theories online about it, to every single crime he has committed, he has always made sure that people had known that he had done it. He does not want anyone else to take the credit or the fall for something that he has done. What sense would it make for him to go off and do 32 other murders anonymously when we have seen so many times in other letters that he clearly appreciates attention. He loves the publicity. With these letters, he would actually send stamps, and in 2002 they actually tried to extract some saliva from the stamps, but since the letters were obviously so old, there was very, very little DNA that they were able to get from it. Back in 2006, we were actually able to get one of the biggest cracked codes. One of the letters, the letter that was sent after the Jim Dunbar show, but they were never able to crack it because it was so complex. Well, in 2006, a portion of it was able to be cracked by 3 guys by the name of David Ornchak, Joel Van Eyck, and Sam Blake. By the work of all three of them, one of them was a computer engineer that was able to put the ciphers into computers and try to unlock the code through that, try to figure out which letters substituted which letters and which symbols substituted which letters. It was very, very hard work. Obviously, it took them many, many years to crack it. They were able to crack a huge portion of that letter.
Started doing a lot of experiments. He sent me about 650,000 different manipulations of the ciphertext. I took all of Sam's manipulations and ran them through Jarl's AZ Decrypt code-breaking program. After many months of running Sam's experiments in AZ Decrypt, I looked at this solution that was mostly gibberish. Hope you are trying to catch me, or the gas chamber. At that time, the rest of the plain text looked like garbage and nonsense, like many other thousands of solutions I've seen over the years. But these phrases turned out to be our way into the real solution. He reads through all the symbols in a diagonal direction, following this rule. First, start in the upper left corner, write out that symbol, move down 1, and then move over 2. Write out that symbol. Continue until you get to an edge. I plugged those into AZ Decrypt using what's called a crib feature. I clicked on Solve with Cribs, and boom, suddenly got a really clean message. And the phrase, "That wasn't me on the TV show," pops out. At this point, I jumped out of my chair and yelled, "Holy shit!" It's because I knew the cipher was received on November 8, 1969, which is about 2 weeks after someone calling themselves Zodiac called into a TV talk show hosted by Jim Dunbar. When we combined all three parts, the final message looks like this. I hope you are having lots of fun and trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber, because it will send me to paradise all the sooner, because I now have enough slaves to work for me, where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise, so they are afraid of death. I am not afraid because I know that my new life will be an easy one in paradise, death. That is the final message we settled on, and we submitted it to the FBI on the morning of Saturday, December 5th. By the time you see this video, it should be officially confirmed by authorities.
That is essentially what he had said in the letter. It was him confessing that that wasn't him on the TV show, which makes a lot of sense because why would the killer go on national television and also request for Melvin Belli to meet him in person? And so a lot of people believe that possibly the Zodiac killer was trying to do something else at the Jim Dunbar show, but not call in. But then once this random person started to call in, pretending to be the Zodiac killer, his plan just kind of went out the window and never followed through with it. It's not him on the TV show, and he is not afraid of death because he feels like everyone that he killed on Earth will be his slaves in the afterlife. This kind of plays into the mental illness portion of it, his delusion that in the afterlife he will have a bunch of slaves if he just continues to kill people. This was absolutely incredible for these people to crack this code because, as I said, even the best of the best back in the 60s could not even crack this code. Now the FBI came out and said, yes, that is the actual cracked code. Of course, everybody screamed and celebrated and freaked out because this was a huge deal, but unfortunately, this code had nothing to do with the Zodiac killer. That is a nice piece of information, but it doesn't actually get us anywhere in the case in trying to figure out who the Zodiac killer actually was. Even to this day, there are still 2 more codes of the Zodiac killer that a lot of people cannot crack at all. During this time, they actually had 2 main suspects that they really did believe was the Zodiac killer. The first person was Arthur Allen. Why a lot of people believe that Arthur was in fact the Zodiac killer is because on the day that that couple was murdered, he actually told his family that he was going to Lake Baronessa in order to scuba dive. Later on that day when he came home from the lake, his family actually said that he came home all bloodied up, like with his clothes were all bloody. The family asked him what went wrong and he said that he had a scuba diving accident and he didn't want to talk about it. He also owned the exact type of boots that like created the prints on the beach that day. It was also said that he had a watch with the same exact circle and cross symbol on it. As far as DNA, during the 60s and 70s, the police you know, didn't really know the significance of DNA. So because of this, a lot of the evidence was handled very, very poorly. Now in 1971, 2 years after this murder, his friend actually went to the police and told on Arthur, and basically told the police that Arthur has claimed to call himself the Zodiac, and that he has said some really weird things recently about how he wants to hunt people as a sport. When they went to go investigate further on Arthur, they actually had him in for an interview. When interviewing him, they asked him like what his favorite book was, and he said that his favorite book was a book titled The Most Dangerous Game, which The Most Dangerous Game is basically a book about like a man who kills people for sport. When they actually searched his place as well, they actually found a bunch of different animal pieces in his freezer, as well as various bloody knives. Now to this, he basically says that he likes to hunt. He puts the animals in the freezer, so then later when he taxidermies them to hang them up, they're a lot easier to like preserve. The police ended up like believing all of this and just let him go, but it actually lined up with the timeline and everything, because in 1974, when the Zodiac had sent his last letter, it was actually around the same time that Alan had went to jail for child molestation. If he's in jail, he can't kill people or send out letters, so that is why the letters randomly had stopped. Also, when they were investigating his home, they also found a bunch of random bomb diagrams, as well as like different bomb materials. Why they didn't arrest him for this, I have no clue, but they just kind of deemed it all as like explainable. There are a few reasons as to why he was never charged, not just because of that. Fingerprint that was found on the payphone did not match Arthur's prints, as well as the DNA found at the crime scene. His DNA did not match up. They actually took Arthur's handwriting, like the handwriting that he would use for work, to make sure that he wasn't trying to like manipulate his handwriting to make it look different as like when he was writing in the police station. They took his handwriting that he would write at work, and it did not match up with the Zodiac killer's handwriting, so that was another reason why they didn't really suspect of him. I also want to mention that, remember earlier when I brought up how his family told the police that on the same day that the Lake Baronessa murders had happened, he went to go there to scuba dive and then he came home with all bloody clothes. A lot of people pointed out that it wouldn't really make sense for him to come home with all bloody clothes if he did commit the crime, because if you remember from Brian's testimony, the man that was approaching them was wearing an executioner's hood, he had a bib, he had dark pants on. It would make no sense if he were to come home like with clothes filled with blood. He didn't even dispose of the bodies or anything, he just left them there. So it would make no sense for his clothes to be all bloody if the killer, the actual killer at the crime scene, was all covered up. Moving on to the second suspect, there was a man by the name of Earl Van Best Jr. Earl's son, named Gary Stewart, actually suspected that his father was indeed the Zodiac killer and made a whole book titled The Most Dangerous Animal of All, and in this book he provides evidence as to why he believes his father was the Zodiac killer. Now, as far as Gary Stewart, the son, his life, his mother was a 14-year-old fugitive married to his father, Earl. Earl at the time was 28 and his mother was 14, which anyway, at that time, Earl just felt like he wasn't ready to be a father. He didn't like kids, and so then he eventually left the family. After Earl had left the family, he was constantly in and out of jail and also in and out of mental hospitals. He just could not keep a stable job. He really wasn't doing the best out on the streets, and since the mother was only 14 years old at the time, she was not able to financially and mentally, like, you know, provide for a child, so she ended up just putting Gary into adoption. One day when the Zodiac killer started to come up on TV with all of these sketches, that is when Gary, at the age of 11 years old, realized that the police sketches on TV looked eerily similar to his father. Looking more into who the Zodiac killer was, he saw immediately a lot of resemblances. Gary claims in his book that his father was a master with ciphers and cryptographics. That was like a really big resemblance because obviously like a lot of people just aren't really into that stuff. So the fact that his father was, it was a huge piece of evidence. In a lot of like the Zodiac's letters, he would frequently make references to a specific opera that he liked to attend, and his father also liked that same exact opera. In 1969, when the cab driver Paul Stein was shot, it just so happened that his father actually lived around the corner to that shooting. He also argued that their handwriting was very, very similar. He took the handwriting from his marriage certificate and compared it to that of the Zodiac killer. In my personal opinion, I don't think their handwriting is similar at all. It was also argued that this handwriting of the marriage certificate could easily be the handwriting of a priest that was marrying his mother and him. When actually bringing all of this evidence forward to the police didn't really do anything with it because he, although had a lot of great points, there was just no hard evidence to charge him with. They felt like a lot of his claims was mostly conspiracy driven. He was basically just kind of spewing out common traits that the Zodiac killer and his father had as far as likes and dislikes. I actually never read the book. If I were to buy the book, it would have been here in like February. I'm assuming that there is probably a lot of evidence in there, but again, not hardcore evidence, just more of conspiracy driven. Now, going on to October 6th, 2021, where the code breakers came out and basically said, this is the Zodiac killer. We're 99% sure it is. On October 6th of 2021, a nonprofit group by the name of the Case Breakers, a group of 40 investigators that specifically focus on cold cases, said that after 53 years of hard work and dedication on the Zodiac killer case, they have finally figured out who the killer was, and this killer is by the name of Gary Francis Poste. Now, why do the code breakers specifically believe that Gary is the killer? And they won't give the full name of this guy, they just call him Will. There was a guy named Will that actually confronted, oh, I was saying the code breakers, I meant the case breakers. They're called the case breakers. He basically went to the case breakers and explained his situation and his connection with the Zodiac killer because he had tried to explain this to the police so many times, but the police have just shunned him off and had done nothing about it. He says that back in the day, him and Gary were actually in a posse together, meaning that they were kind of in the same friend group and they would just kind of do crime of their own, like to get money. But there had been a few times where he had seen Gary hide a bunch of like his murder weapons in the mountains of the Sierra. Now, the person who first heard this case from Will was actually a man named Dale Julian. Now, Dale Julian took this case to the case breakers and they fully heard out Will and fully heard out his story. A lot of the information that Will was saying really matched up with a lot of the things that they had found out, like FBI documents that no one knew about, that none of the public knew about, so there was no way that Will could be fabricating any part of this story. A lot of consistencies with Gary because obviously Gary is a real person, so they started looking into his past and there were a lot of consistencies with his lifestyle and the Zodiac killer's lifestyle. They also found that it was very odd that wherever the murders happened, Gary just so happened to be living in that area. Saw that Gary had the same exact scars on his forehead of the Zodiac killer sketch. Will had told the case breakers, Gary Francis Post, if you put his name into the code, you can actually crack the code by using his name, Gary Francis Post, and they were able to crack the final piece of this puzzle. Gary Francis Post was the person who did all of this because what are the odds that like Gary Francis Post, his name happened to be the key to crack this puzzle if it wasn't Gary Francis Post that did this puzzle in the first place. Now, the case breakers are absolutely ecstatic because they have cracked the code. They took it to the FBI and the FBI have confirmed, but unfortunately, dun dun dun, what do you know? He passed away in 2018. So no one actually knows if this guy really did it or maybe it was just based upon speculation. Since Gary was dead, obviously you can't arrest a dead person. They are 99.9% sure it is Gary, but since Gary is dead, there's no person to actually arrest and accuse. So that's why the case is still remained unsolved. Extraordinary claim requires extraordinary evidence, and in this case, they they really did have a lot of extraordinary evidence to pin it on Gary, but they just weren't able to get that satisfaction of actually arresting him. In this case, they were very sure that it was Gary. They just don't know for sure. Do I need to say it again? Gary is dead. So they can't really get a, confession from him. Also, when looking into Gary's past in 1974, when the letters had stopped, that was actually the same exact year that Gary had gotten married. So it was said that Gary most likely got married in 1974. He had kids and he basically just cleaned up his life and got some help and didn't really feel the need to kill anymore. Today, all of those letters were analyzed by different psychologists. Seemed to be that he had some sort of dissociative disorder, or it is suspected that he might have had DID, and one of his alters, he basically went into this mind state when he wanted to kill someone and he didn't know how to control it. So after he got married, he got some help and he was able to kind of clean up his life to the point where he basically recovered from his mental illnesses and he really had no desire or reason to kill like he used to anymore. Although he had no college education, he was an insanely intelligent man from his friends and family. Even his kids went off to go to amazing colleges. That is essentially the story of the Zodiac killer. I truly do believe that it is Gary just because I trust the FBI and what they say. That is the story. I hope you guys found this interesting, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I said this in last video that from now on I won't be like posting directly on Fridays. I'll mostly just be posting once a week. This is so cool. This is my first video of 2021. I hope you guys had a wonderful new year. Mine is going well, like a little too well. Shanetta's Divine Tarot on YouTube, she did a 2022 prediction. I did that and I am feeling very, very pumped for this new year. So that was beautiful. Old Hollywood look. I was gonna curl my hair, but then I ran out of time. I already mentioned my Christmas tree is still up. I lost the box and I don't know like where to put it. Where do I put it? Like in a bag? Like a garbage bag? Is a garbage bag even tall enough to fit that tree? That tree is 6 foot. So yeah, I don't know of any 6-foot garbage bags. I put up my favorite movie in the whole wide world, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I got a frame and I'm gonna frame it. So next video, that should be framed. I also got this coat and I feel like Carrie Bradshaw. This ring is from H&M. I try to thrift everything because thrifting is so much better. Do I need to say it for the people in the back? Please don't buy from big corporations. I know it looks very attractive because it's cheap. Give it a year and you probably won't be wearing those same clothes. If you are going to buy something that's like amazing quality, buy it from a sustainable brand. Don't contribute to fast fashion. It's really not worth it. It's just going to wreck the planet. And then your kids are going to be on Earth as like 50-year-olds and be like, what? Why the heck is there so much trash on the Earth? And then you got to sit there and be like, well, I really wanted these zebra pants from Shein. Vlogging. I mentioned last video that I wanted to start vlogging again, which I am going to start vlogging. I'm in the works. I'm in the works of another vlog right now. I really want to make more vlogs this year. New Year's resolutions. I made my 2022 board. I'm not going to show you the pictures because sometimes people can give you like the evil eye and then your manifestations don't come true. I got these prescription sunglasses. They make me feel like I'm in the Matrix. A lot of you guys wanted to know what books I'm reading. I'm reading this one right now, The Mysterious Benedict Society. It's really, really good. There's so many books. Might just read this book and then watch the show because that's a lot easier on my brain. It's this. Are you a gifted child exploring for special opportunities? When this particular ad appears in the newspaper, dozens of children enroll to take a series of mysterious, mind-bending tests. In the end, just 4 special children will succeed. They're challenged to go on a secret mission that only the most intelligent and resourceful children could complete. With their newfound friendship at stake, will they be able to pass the most important test of all? Welcome to the Mysterious Benedict Society. These kids see an ad in the newspaper asking for like intelligent children. They go to the building, they take this test. It's a series of like really odd tests. A series of unfortunate events, K through 12 Melanie Martinez movie. How it's very offbeat and whimsical. Kind of like a Wes Anderson movie, very offbeat and whimsical. That's how this book is. It's really good. This was $10. So $10. You could get your hands on this. So that's all for me. I film, I research, I edit, and that's all I really do. So thank you to BLUELAND for sponsoring today's video. With that being said, I love you, I love you, I love you, and do something that makes you happy today.